right.
I'm just here to make a quick announcement, and that is that we will begin in like 5-10 minutes. So enjoy some beer, order food. King Street has a food menu now, and they'll send you a text when your food's ready downstairs. So you just have to run down a floor to grab some food. And look at that, that looks delicious. Amazing. So yeah, we'll get started in just a few minutes. All right. Hello, City Nerds. How's it going tonight? Yay. Great. One more time. Hello, City Nerds. How's it going tonight? Thank you. Thank you. Well, it is a beautiful day to be here in Anchorage, Alaska on Denina lands. And I'm just amazed that we're still getting days of summertime. This is really beautiful. This is such an amazing venue for this event, City Nerd Nite. The theme tonight is water. Because today we have all of these wonderful people. We're joining in community with fellow nerds. And we have this entire deck that we're able to access. So it's beautiful out there. Tonight you're going to hear from really 8 Anchorage locals that are going to be geeking out about water. So we have a bonus nerd, Assembly Member Meg Zalatel, who's going to kick things off. And then 7 locals have 7 minutes to nerd out about a topic related to the theme of the night. And as I said, today's water. In the mix of that, we'll also take an intermission, so you'll have an opportunity to get some more beer, order more food, step outside, enjoy that sweet sunshine, and then we'll come back in, wrap up our presentations, and close with a Q&A session with all 8 nerds. How does that sound? Yeah, love. So just a couple of housekeeping things before we kick things off. As I mentioned, we have beer on tap. This is Eli. Everybody give Eli a shout. So Eli has a great selection of beer. We also have soft drinks and soda water available, as well as water just here from this little container. And as I mentioned, they've got a great food menu that's pretty new, and they'll send you a text message when your food is ready downstairs on the 2nd floor. So at that point, you'll see your little text message, and then you'll very mindfully walk yourselves out of the doors, run downstairs, grab your food, and join us back for the rest of the program. Restrooms are out these doors and on either side, men's and women's. Otherwise, we're just going to be here for the next couple hours, totally nerding out together. And there's no better way to spend a Thursday evening. So thank you all for being here. And without further ado, please welcome our bonus nerd to kick things off, Meg. You got your clicker. And I've got 7 minutes.
All right. Hey, what's up, nerds? All right. So I'm going to talk we're actually getting the end of the story at the beginning. So we are going to talk about what happens after clear water comes out of your tap and goes down the drain. So huge shout out to AWU for giving me so much material. I am really just the spokesperson for AWU tonight. So down the drain, but not forgotten. And I think that those are just words we should all live by after I learned so much putting this together. Fog, we want no fog. Fog is bad. Fog is fats, oils, and grease. They are the largest cause of sewage line blockages. All right, I'm going to just give a little warning here. Some of these pictures are real gross as we proceed. It's costly. It's very time-consuming. And often it builds up in such a way as to cause an emergent situation. And we know when we deal with emergencies, it's more expensive. And who pays for that? Ratepayers. You do. And frankly, it's just gross. Like, as I said, warned, gross, gross, gross. Fog comes from so many things: meat, sauces, gravies, salads, pastries, and cookies, deep-fried dishes. We really need to be placing all of our food scraps either in compost or in the garbage, not down your sink, and definitely not down your toilet. So, not that I'm calling anyone out. The other thing you should not place down your toilet are wipes. I don't care if they say they're flushable. I don't care if they say they're biodegradable. Do not put wipes down your, flush your wipes. $441 million is spent annually throughout the United States due to wipes. That's a lot of money. And it doesn't matter, and we really saw this happen during COVID. So what we have to think about, right, is anything that comes through your house, water comes out your tap, anything going down those drains, that's the beginning of the story for that. And that story can end up in really gross situations. So I think we should just print these out wholesale, and people should put them in their bathrooms. You flushed what down the toilet? And it should only be pee, poop, and toilet paper. I mean, I hate to state the obvious, but that's really all it should be, okay? I love that Snoop Dogg, like, I would take a picture of Snoop Dogg and put him in my bathroom and say, yep, you flushed what down the toilet? Okay, so here's some of the gross pictures. So this is what it looks like when those wipes don't degrade. They just back up and cause a clog. Like, it stinks when your toilet clogs at home, right? Toilet paper, whatever else, and you have to deal with that. Think of that writ so large at a magnitude that it just fills a sewer pipe. Ugh, right? If anything, I want you to leave here tonight grossed out about these things so that you never do them, okay? And AWU needs to keep our water flowing and wastewater going 24/7, 365. Having access to clean water and the disposal of wastewater is key to public safety and public health. So we can all do our part. All right, anybody guess what that is? Other than gross? That's a fatberg, yeah, ugh. And that is a fatberg that was removed from our pipes here in Anchorage. So we all created that. We're collectively responsible for that. So there's a video of this. I didn't bring the video. I couldn't watch the video. It made my stomach turn. But fog, it can be collected during an emergency fog release, which, right, when we have to do a fog release, it's a significant disruption to our treatment plant operations. It requires an emergency response from AWU crews to keep our plants operational and in compliance. That's the other part of this story here. Our water and our wastewater have to stay in compliance with regulation. It is very important. It is very costly if we go out of compliance because we would have to engage in remedial measures. So what are we not going to do? We're not going to flush wipes. We're going to make sure only pee, poop, and toilet paper go down the toilet, and we're going to make sure all of our food scraps are composted or hit the trash. And in doing that, you will make your water utility very, very happy, and you will save yourselves money. So that's my presentation on what happens when water leaves the tap.
Give it up for Meg. Beautiful. And 2 minutes to spare. You might have noticed this beautiful monitor over here. It's my very own work laptop showing the 7-minute timer that each nerd has. Now, I'll say the 7-minute timer is very strict, We're having strict enforcement of the 7-minute timer tonight. So Meg, you did a great job. Didn't have to have strict enforcement. Other nerds, I'm looking at you. Be thinking about those 7 minutes. So the other thing that I failed to mention at the top of the program, but is good and top of mind here in this transition, is that each table has a stack of note cards, a couple of pens, and this is going to be a great opportunity for you to get to know the folks at your table. We're sharing tonight, folks. So you're going to have to ask nicely when a question pops in your mind and say, hey, friend, do you mind passing me a note card and a pen? I've got a question. Go ahead and jot that down. And that's how we will facilitate the question and answer period at the end of the program. So go ahead and just hang on to those cards. I'll do a round of collecting after, or like during the intermission. And then after we close up the presentations, we'll do another round of collection to queue up for the Q&A. So a question that comes to my mind after Meg's presentation is, who's responsible for cleaning up that mess? Probably somebody. Yeah, not you. Yeah, fair. Probably somebody, but we'll find out after the presentations are all done. So I like to describe the run of City Nerd Nite a little bit like jazz. We are going to move from one topic to the next, and there's so much to cover on the theme of water. So please give a warm welcome to our next nerd, Brian.
I get one extra second.
You get a whole extra second. Lucky dog. Oh, and here's this.
Oh. All right, can you guys hear me? All right, so very nice to be here. I know a few of you, but for those that don't, my name is Brian Bretschneider. I am a climate scientist. I actually work for the U.S. National Weather Service here in Anchorage, and I do a lot of science communication, and I'm kind of informally known as a mooseologist. Okay, so I'm gonna talk a little bit, kind of some entry-level high school, college science. I want to talk about the water cycle. So why does Anchorage, or any place, especially here in Alaska, look like it does? So we have two things going on, right? We've got, over tens of millions of years, we got geology lifts up the land. Did I hear that we have a geologist? Any geologists in the house? A couple geologists, all right. But then stuff works to whittle the land down and to shape the land, and that's primarily the climate. And so we have different cycles. We've got glaciers, we've got water, and we've got some freezing action. We've got earthquakes and all that. But I'm going to talk about the water cycle. It's water night, right? I heard it's water night. So I'm going to talk about the way that the climate works with the water cycle to shape the land a little bit, as much as I can do in 7 minutes. Okay, so this might have been in your high school earth science textbook, right? The water cycle. So we've got multiple cycles. We've got geologic, a rock cycle. We've got a carbon cycle. You've heard of global warming. We've got the water cycle. So we want to talk about how water is cycled through the system. Okay, so again, I want you to think about, as we're looking out, trees, forest, mountains, all of it is shaped by this water cycle, right? So, water is in this loop. We get evaporation from the oceans, from the trees, the soil, goes up, gets squeezed out, falls down, and as it falls down, it's shaping the landscape. So primarily through erosion, but also through some more subtle processes as well. Oh, I got a little bit ahead of myself. Okay, so pretend you didn't see that. How much precipitation, and when we say precipitation, we're talking about rain or melted snow, right? So from the climate space, we care about snow, but we talk about what's the precipitation, all right? So what's the precipitation average annual for Anchorage? You might have seen it up there. 16.4 inches. Good job, good guess. 16.4, okay? Does that sound like a lot? I mean, like, how much does Phoenix get? like 9. Okay. Okay, so here's a map that shows the line of who gets 16.4 inches and who doesn't, right? So, you know, we get less than Seattle. We get less than every place in the eastern US, lower 48. We get less than San Francisco. So in one sense, we're a really dry place. In a lot of cases, we think of our first pass colloquial definition of a desert is 10 inches of rain a year. And between 10 and 20, we call that a steppe. So think of like, you know, the Serengeti Plain or something. But does it look like the Serengeti Plain out here? Not at all. So here's some places that also get 16.4 inches, plus or minus 1 inch. So this is really close. Honolulu, Colorado Springs, okay, Monterey, Clayton, New Mexico. Is this what it looks like outside? Anyone? Okay, why not? Why doesn't it look like Honolulu outside? Well, latitude, temperature, but how does that affect the water cycle? Okay, so we have this really kind of basic water equation. Okay, total water equation, precipitation, you know, minus potential evapotranspiration, or basically what goes down versus what goes up, or what potentially could go up. Okay, so you know, Colorado Springs, they get 30 or so inches. If it was available, 30 inches of water would go up, but only 16 is falling down. So they're in a net water deficit. Okay, well, Honolulu's not even on here. It's probably way up there. I mean, Phoenix gets 9 inches, but their water demand is like 60 inches, right? So a tremendous water deficit. Okay, up here, we're kind of close to equilibrium. We get about the same amount going down, falling down from the sky, as goes up. Okay, so a nice balance that we're in. Up in the interior, it's a little bit different. Fairbanks gets about 12 inches of rain a year in melted snow. But their up demand is about 20 inches, right? So they have a net deficit. So it's drier. The landscape is a little drier up there. So what does that mean? What are the implications of a drier landscape? What are some of the things that happens when it's a little drier out? Fire. All right. So as temperatures rise, and they are rising, I'm a climate scientist, trust me on this, they are rising, what's going to happen is actually precipitation is going to go up a little bit. And we're seeing that. But what's going to go up faster is our evaporative water demand. So the net is, even though we're going to get more moisture, it's going to function a little bit drier. It's going to function a little bit more like the interior, not with the wild temperature extremes, but with the water demand, okay? So what are some of the things that happen in the interior in the summer? Fire, okay? So it might take decades for like our vegetation to start adjusting, or a century, but the change in evaporative demand might occur quicker. So we've got trees that are pretty flammable, but they're also mostly pretty wet right now. But our flammable trees, as they get drier, could be a problem. That's all. Thank you.
Brian, you wrapped that up beautifully. Wonderful. And I'm just going to let this run down to 0, Brian. Wonderful. You were about to hear me go beep, beep, which nobody needs. Okay, great. Give it up for Brian, and let's welcome Jacques. So you got your timer, your mic's on, your clicker. Beautiful.
Before I get started, let's just hear it up for Meg here, because I'm from AWU, and I can't give that presentation that good. So let's just and also for Brian, thank you for that. It was very great. I'm going to be talking a little bit about the pipes in the ground, how we get the water to and from your house, and kind of what some of the problems are, maybe the threats and the opportunities we got. Before I start, though, and one thing to remember, we obviously take care of both the clean water and the dirty water, so keep that in mind. But I'm going to need a quick little room survey here. How much how many people are in Anchorage, in our service area, do we serve? And am I at the symphony here, or am I at a brewery? Let's hear some answers here. 60, 40, 80, 80? I heard 80. 80 is the correct answer, 80%, 80%, all right? So it's not everybody. We don't serve everybody, which has its challenges, and it's also, you know, that it has its challenges, I would just say, because we're a city. Most people expect water and sewer at their property, right? When I'm talking about what infrastructure we're talking about, I'm talking about this cross section here. So if you were to dig a hole in the middle of the street and look at that big hole, you'd see this picture right here, right? So you'd see a bunch of pipes, you'd see where the road is, where the trees are, obviously the car's up top there. And you could see here, there are two utilities that are deeper than everybody else. The sewer, which is about 8 feet, and the water, which is about 10 feet. And that arrow there on the side is exactly what it's trying to communicate, which is the deeper you go, the more expensive it is. Because the farther we go down, we got to rebuild everything back up. We are generally the deepest utility in Anchorage, so we are typically the most expensive on a linear foot basis. Historically, we've expanded our system, or our system has grown through two major processes, and there's nuances to this, so I'm not going to get into that. But we have improvement districts and private developers, right? And before AWU was AWU, there were a bunch of small utilities around town, and then it became incorporated, right? And so we kind of got this patchwork system that was put together through improvement districts, and also developers that built subdivisions. They would come and connect into our thing. And so eventually today we're most of Anchorage. But there are still some smaller private utilities around town that are connected to our system as a backup. But majority of it is us, right? 80%, right? One of the things about this is that this really was a market-driven thing, right? It didn't necessarily consider equitability as one of its major drivers, right? Did you have the means to have an improvement district? Did you have the means to buy 40 acres of land and develop it? Did you have the means to buy a home? So it was very market-driven, right? And we're regulated by the RCA, so that's a thing that we do think about and talk about on a regular basis. Today's challenge is really all these historical practices that we've had. They're a little bit they're not sustainable for a couple of reasons. Number one, obviously, as I mentioned before, it's underinvested in some of our disadvantaged communities. Number two, obviously, inflation is on all of our minds right now. So a lot of the consumer goods, the gas and other things, cars that we've bought as just residents, that's gone up a lot. For the utility, that's actually gone up significantly more because we've got pipes and valves and pumps that are kind of specialized. The increase that we've seen has been significantly more than what you hear about in the papers. So that's a real concern from us. And finally, the inequitable allocation of costs and benefits. And what I'm talking about here is, back in the day, right, and when we first started, the cost to get a home, get connected, it was a little bit more manageable. And if you got in early, you now see a lot of benefit from that. Today, it's a little bit higher to get in, and you're going to get the same benefit. So that's not necessarily, you don't have necessarily the same generational equality that we're talking about here. In response to this, the utility has been pushing and working on two major categories to help kind of make it more of an equitable solution and kind of address some of these challenges. And one thing I didn't mention here, which I'd like to point out, is that when we don't have water and sewer to all of our properties, right, we have less potential for homes, we have less potential for businesses. The cost to start businesses or start homes, it just costs more, right? So you want to have these public services because it helps drive the economic engine. So we've got two programs here that we've really been pushing in the last couple of years. There's infrastructure coordination agreements, which is P3s, which is flexible contracts. They help incentivize market conditions to really benefit the public, and I've got an example for that. And then we also have federal and state grant opportunities. So from an ICA perspective, here's an ICA that we did in Sand Lake, and it's on Seacliff Road here, so you can see where the capital project is and where the private development is. And what's noted here is that we would not have been able to get water to some of our existing residents without this ICA. And it improved health and safety from the private and community wells that are there, right? So old wells in the Sand Lake area that have, water quality concerns, they now have the option to hook up to public water at a very significantly reduced cost because of the ICA. It also added fire hydrants to this community, didn't have them there before. And then the last thing I'll note is that obviously because we're the deepest utility, we had to rebuild the street, and it made, and actually the engineer that did it is in here today, and it looks fantastic. So that, I think it really affected the property values along that street as well. From a funding perspective, the municipalities and AWU specifically has been pursuing a lot of grant funds. Here's a short summary about what we've got funded and is going to be coming through the pike here in the next couple years. What we're waiting to get approval on, about 80, and what we're monitoring. So somewhere around a quarter of $1 billion is what we're looking at investing in this community. That's important because grant funds has the power to stop and reverse the economic stagnation or decline that Anchorage has kind of been experiencing the past couple of years, so that it becomes a self-feeding cycle of creating jobs with construction projects, increasing housing supply, allowing first-time home buyers, which then can build generational wealth, and we continue that cycle. All right? Closing, we have got a couple of specific opportunities that in that grant funding that we're going to be talking about at the Community and Economic Development Committee for the Assembly. That's going to be introduced on the 5th, and we're going to go in detail here on October 4th, run by Assembly Member Martinez, and beep, that's me. So I made it, just barely.
Well done, Jacques. Awesome job. Thanks so much. Great. All right, we've got one more nerd in the lineup before our intermission, so please welcome Alan. Alan, welcome. Another warm welcome for Alan. Woohoo!
Okay. All right, so here we go. I'll see if I can stay within 7 minutes. So, water in our winter city. Can we do better? So, all right, first off, Anchorage is a unique place. You got to believe it. Anchorage is the only major metropolitan area on the North American continent located in the subarctic. So why is that? Why are we in the subarctic? It has to do with the tilt of the Earth on its axis, 24.1 degrees. So we tilt away from the sun half of the cycle, and tilt towards the sun the other half of the cycle. You can see here, there are seasonal variations. The light blue, okay, see that right there? That's half the year. What is that? Oh, that's winter, right? Is it? No, it's not winter now. So, the reality of winter dominance, right? So this is a poet from Finland. I got to read this. Winter is the true season of the north. Spring is only a promise that something great is about to happen. Summer, only an illusion of what people during some hot days or weeks at the most believe to be true. Autumn means death. It is the dark grave of the promises of the spring and of the illusions of the summer. But winter is something that really exists. Winter, it never deceives. It always comes back. We can do better. We can do better by incorporating winter city design. So we have there's a lot of work out there if we want to take advantage of it, right? But first of all, we have to recognize there's a duality of life in the far north, right? Duality, lots of light, lots of dark. So, winter water. So this is winter water. So, you guys might recognize these type of situations this past couple of winters. Lots of snow. And what happens to that frozen, water? It goes on our sidewalks, right? So basically, you're depriving, people who don't have a vehicle of mobility for 6 months of the year. Now, sometimes we do a good job, right? We got a great trail system. We maintain the trails. Winter can be a wonderland. But winter water, in order for us to get there, we really need, between the first two slides, you need more participation by people, right? And more volunteers. In order to deal with these episodic, major snow events. So can Anchorage celebrate its uniqueness, right? So now there's the 6 stages of winter adaptation, right? There's enduring winter. I think there's a substantial number of people who are there. The second is tolerating winter. Okay, there's a little bit more. Accepting winter, respect. This is like a funnel, right? The more further down you go, the narrower that funnel gets. Down at the bottom, celebrating winter. Okay, well, there's not that many people popping down there to celebrating winter. So the key thing, how do we celebrate a future Anchorage, where our built environment matches the beauty of our natural environment in all of our seasons? And that's it.
Alan, wow. Race through. Wonderful, folks. Well, we're going to take about a 10-minute break. We've got beer on tap, restrooms behind me, good food to order, and excellent company. So enjoy one another, and we'll get nerdy here in just a few.
True backyard. Jacques Washington. Thank you all. Choose a
Wicks on the drums. And Mr. Steve Nelson on the keys playing for you. My name's Justin Smith, and we got Doc Washington in the house, all the way here from Phoenix to sing for you. And stick around, folks, because we're playing all night. Here we go.
All right, folks, wrap up your conversations, run to the restroom one last time, and we're going to get seated. All right, folks, people are sitting. People are wrapping things up. I don't know about you, but I'm excited for the second half of this program because, woo is right. We are looking forward. We are thinking about the future. We are thinking about stewarding the limited resources that we have. And so as we move into this second half, I was thinking, I got the chance to chat with a couple of folks here in the audience today, and I realized that we have some City Nerd Nite alumni in the room today. Yeah, go ahead and raise your hand if you've presented at City Nerd Nite before. Yeah, look at that. That's awesome. And it also occurred to me that part of the reason that City Nerd Nite is so successful is because nerds, you all here present today, tell your friends, stay tuned in when our call for pitches is released, and tell your friends, hey, I think you would be so good on this theme. And so today we are going to kick off the second half of our program with someone who was referred to this program by a former nerd. So give it up for Charla.
Hello. There we go. All right, so what do a sparkly bouncy ball, a hot pink crock full of barnacles, a single slip-on sandal, a single-use plastic bottle that at some point held some fine Alaska glacier water, and this broken-down wooden table have in common? The beach, yeah. Other ideas? Some of them. They're all marine debris pulled out of our favorite element found in one of my favorite places. Hi, I'm Charla. I'm a beachcombing nerd who has the honor of working with this super cool, awesome local nonprofit called the Prince William Sound Stewardship Foundation. And marine debris cleanups are a big part of our work to help keep Prince William Sound healthy, clean, and wild for all to enjoy. When we're not out cleaning beaches or planning to go clean beaches, you might find us putting on our annual Prince William Sound Natural History Symposium. We have some past speakers in the house tonight, too. And everybody's welcome to join us for that event in May. You can also find us doing trail work and many other community-driven projects. So what exactly is marine debris? NOAA defines it as any persistent solid material that is manufactured or processed and directly or indirectly, intentionally or unintentionally, disposed of or abandoned into the marine environment or the Great Lakes. Anything human-made and solid can become marine debris once it's littered into these aquatic environments. So marine debris is found in all corners of the globe, including this one right here, on the coast of Knight Island in southwestern Prince William Sound. As you can see in the photo, the debris in Prince William Sound, like that around the world, is, yes, largely plastic. We have plastic bottles, buckets, buoys, and big chunks of foam, and even things that don't start with the letter B. What you don't see here are all the plastic fragments and microplastics, the bits of plastic foam that get degraded by their time drifting in the ocean and rolling along pebbled, wooded coastlines. As you can imagine, those fragments and microplastics are much harder to clean up. Do a cleanup with us, and we promise you will never think of styrofoam in the same way again. Micro or macro, plastic or another material, marine debris is a major issue that's rightly getting a lot of local and global attention. Just how major of an issue is marine debris? Sources estimate between 8 and 12 million metric tons of debris go into the oceans each year, with about 80% of that being plastic. And roughly half of all plastic that's produced each year is designed for single uses. It's used for a moment and then thrown away. But we all know there's really no way. Plastics can persist in the environment for centuries. So the predominance of plastic, 80% of marine debris, is consistent with what we see in Prince William Sound. We're working with the Chugach National Forest and a growing network of partners like the U.S. Coast Guard, Section Valdez that you see here, NOAA, Gulf of Alaska Keeper, Plastic Ocean Waste Solutions, the Ocean Conservancy, Whittier Parks and Rec, and scientists and academics to not only clean up coastlines, but to collect data to better understand the types, origins, and effects of marine debris. In the ocean? Yes. In the ocean and on the coastline, marine debris can pose a hazard to wildlife, with ingestion and entanglement being top concerns. Those are also hazards to people. A 2019 study out of the University of Newcastle in Australia suggested that we may be consuming around 5 grams of microplastics. That's a credit card's worth of plastic per week. Yikes. Yeah. As marine plastics degrade, they not only enter the food chain, posing a hazard to wildlife, especially to filter feeders like this humpback whale, and are starting a journey of bioaccumulation. They not only become a pain to pluck out of beaches, but they also emit greenhouse gases, contributing to ocean acidification and climate change. So what can you do? For starters, join the Prince William Sound Stewardship Foundation. You can join us as a member. You can join us on a single-day cleanup down the road in Whittier, or sign up for a multi-day volunteer adventure with us in partnership with the Chugach National Forest. Tim Lydon will be up soon to talk more about the forest and about our partnership and our growing network of partners and how we track trends in marine debris in Prince William Sound. And see those yellow bags? You don't have to wait for a scheduled beach cleanup day. You can pick up some yellow bags at different locations in Whittier, like the Harbor Master's Office, Alaska Sea Kayakers, Lazy Otter Cafe, and then when you're headed out into Prince William Sound, and you can do your own marine debris cleanup. If you can't haul out what you collect, say you're on a kayak and you can't fit a giant yellow bag or a refrigerator door, then you can send us an email and we'll reach out to our growing network of partners. And if you send us a photo and GPS coordinates, we'll talk about a cleanup and leave it better out there. So, you can do things every day as well to help take care of the world's waters. Challenge yourself to use less plastic. Use refillable containers. Try replacing single-use items like plastic cutlery with sustainable or multi-use ones. And securely dispose of your trash to help take care of waterways that surround you. And not to mention that it'll help take care of the wildlife that might get curious about that trash too. Your daily acts of stewardship can make a difference on a local and global scale. So thanks to all the stewards, the nerds, and the stew nerds, cool new word of the night, out there who are helping keep Prince William Sound and other waterways healthy, clean, and wild for all to enjoy.
I love that I just threatened to beep beep at the end of 7 minutes, and our nerds are staying so beautifully on the dot. That's wonderful. Thanks, Charla. Round of applause. Next, we'll welcome Tim. Yay, thanks, Tim. Come on up. Round of applause for Tim, please. And while we're giving rounds of applause, I'd like to give a major shout out to the production team that makes this event such a success each and every time. Casey in the back. Thank you, Casey. And his partner, Trent, is downstairs. Let's clap so loud that Trent can hear it. Thank you, Trent. Wonderful. We've got some good stuff up here. Ooh, it's like a puzzle. Yay. Excellent. All right. Tim, are you ready?
Yes.
Audience, are you ready?
Hey, everybody. I'm Tim Leiden with the Chugach National Forest. I'm the manager for the 2 million acre wilderness study area in Prince William Sound. And forgot to bust out my notes, but let's see. Gonna get a map up here in a sec. Okay, here we go. So first off, the Forest Service, we wouldn't be in the business of marine debris if it wasn't for the Prince William Sound Stewardship Foundation. As a founding member of the organization, we put together this nonprofit to increase the Forest Service's capacity to do work in Prince William Sound, including with marine debris. And since that time, Charla and the board have done a pretty amazing job pulling together grants, a volunteer workforce, and social media and other platforms, outreach to the public, all things that we as the agency aren't really great at doing. So we give a lot of thanks to the Stewardship Foundation. This map right here is a map of the Chugach National Forest. You can see Prince William Sound here. The wilderness study area is outlined in green. And marine debris comes into Prince William Sound generally through Hinchinbrook entrance, and it accumulates the most in those islands in the center there, around Knight Island and the other islands. So that's our primary area where we work. And we do a lot of things like Charlotte mentioned, but kind of the meat of our program is every summer we do 2 multi-day trips with a volunteer workforce where we go along those islands, and we have 2 Forest Service vessels, and we pull out between 2,000 and 4,000 pounds of garbage every summer. There's a lot of partners, and I'll mention just 2 of them. Many of you probably know Pat Simpson of Alaska Plastic Recovery. He takes all of our plastic and he manufactures that into dimensional lumber that he calls grizzly wood. And then, of course, Chris Pallister of Gulf of Alaska Keeper, who's been doing marine debris cleanup in Alaska as long as anybody that I know. So we go out here and we collect our 2,000 pounds of garbage, 4,000 pounds, whatever it is. We load up our boats, and then we go out the following year, and there's another 2,000 to 4,000 pounds on the same beaches. And that's the disheartening reality of the marine debris issue. And you can think of a lot of communities, remote communities like in the Pribilofs or the Aleutians, Guam, other places where they get a lot of marine debris, but they don't have a workforce in place to remove it, and they have to spend a lot of money trying to get that out of remote places. We're in a little bit better shape in Prince William Sound because we have the agency engagement, we have a nonprofit in place, and we're close to the road system. So when we come in with a couple 1,000 pounds of garbage, Pat Simpson is there with his truck, and he takes all of that for us and does something with it to turn it into his grizzly wood. So we have a little more energy and capacity than other communities have, and so we put that effort toward monitoring, which is not something that a lot of communities can do. They're more just kind of like hanging on and trying to clean up their beaches. And keep in mind, marine debris as an issue is pretty new to recent decades, and the explosion of plastics, and so is monitoring. So Chris Pallister, when he first started, he was cleaning beaches, and he had 144 categories that he would put garbage into, what it was, what material it was, that kind of thing. And then when we started our program, you know, he has a great data set, but it's very labor intensive. When we started our program, we decided that we couldn't do that, but we also had tools that he didn't have when he started, like NOAA's Marine Debris Tracker is an app that you could download on your phone before I stop speaking, and you can use that to go to a beach, and you can log what you're finding on the beach, submit, and you've suddenly joined an international conversation on marine debris. So we worked with NOAA on their marine debris tracker to customize it to what we were doing, to get a little bit more information. And one of the bits of information we want to get, Charla touched on, Prince William Sound is unique because we're an inland sea, and we have a lot of commercial tourism and recreation and commercial fishing activity going on in there. And when Chris Pallister's out on the outside of Montague Island here, cleaning up the Gulf, he's finding a lot of stuff. He says 90% of what he finds is trans-Pacific in nature. This is something that I use to harvest my potatoes every fall now. But in this inside of the sound, we think as much as 30% is coming from local sources. And so we use that marine debris tracker. We created our own criteria to identify what could we reasonably identify as things that are coming from the sound, like this big buoy with the ADF&G sticker on, or tag on it, right? Or this bit of propaganda, strangely found in the ocean, right? Only you. But buoys, too, from across the Pacific Ocean, which you can fashion into planters. I know. If you want to awe more, I gave the first one of those to my wife on Mother's Day. So we use that to say how much is locally generated, and that enables us to engage the public. But we took it a step further, too. You may have heard of the Tourism Best Management Practices agreement going in place in Whittier and Prince William Sound to promote sustainable tourism. And we were able, using our data about locally generated marine debris, we were able to get a whole section in that in marine debris. So when a restaurant, a tour operator, or a cruise ship signs this agreement, they are also agreeing to a number of stipulations to prevent their contribution to local marine debris. So to us, that's how you go from monitoring to outreach and to action. We're pretty happy with that outcome. I also won't have time to get into it, but the other thing we try to monitor for is container spills. You all probably heard about the coolers, the high-end coolers washing up on shore. They came from a container spill off of the coast of British Columbia, which also had bath mats. And every year we find different things. Bike helmets, fly swatters with NFL emblems on them, and other things. But by tracking this, we're able to join conversations or create conversations along the coast about what's coming from container spills and how far it's going, what condition it's in. Beep. Shipping. All right, I'll just leave it at that. I want to.
Round of applause. And Tim, before you get down. Tim, before you go. One moment. Cheer if you would like Tim to finish his presentation.
Sit back. I thought it was 17 minutes. You know that much of what we're wearing, what we're driving, what we're eating comes from container ships. Like this one, the One Opus, which in 2019, while it was crossing the North Pacific, ran into foul weather and lost 1,400 shipping containers. The shipping industry is not transparent about the location or size of container spills, but they're also not transparent, especially about the contents of containers. If you're on Twitter, go follow Lost Lego at Sea for the 5 million Lego pieces that were in one container that spilled 25 years ago and are still washing up on the Cornish coast. But because of that lack of transparency, by monitoring that, we're able to start those conversations. Like I said, the bath mat and the coolers came from western Vancouver Island. And in recent years, there's been a couple of settlements that have given money to communities. And the shipping containers aren't a huge proportion, but they are some proportion. And that money helps communities that are at a disadvantage to clean that stuff up. But not only do you get that from monitoring, you also learn, hey, we got this bath mat. When did that container spill happen? This is an example of what was in there. Here's the condition it's in when it washes up 7 months later in Prince William Sound, 1,600 miles away. So we understand ocean currents, degradation, all that kind of stuff. So thanks a lot for the extension.
Give it up for Tim. Beautiful, Tim. Thank you so much. Tim, I am going to leave your stuff up here, and folks can check it out after we wrap up. How does that sound? I'm not a fisher lady, so I've never seen a buoy like this, so I think it's pretty cool. And this is super clever. Reduce, reuse, recycle, we love. All right. So next up, so we've got 2 more nerd presentations, and then we'll be transitioning into a Q&A. So that'll be another break period where you all will get the chance to use the restroom before we come back together. So second to last, nerd of the night, please join me in welcoming Frank. All right, Frank, I'm putting 7 minutes on the board. I'm making sure that you have a clicker. This is yours. And a microphone. This is yours. Beautiful. Whenever you're ready.
I've got to get my presentation up so I can read it. Okay, testing. Okay, thank you. Thank you for getting my presentation up there. I am Frank. They call me Frank, sometimes just a little too frank. And I've lived in Anchorage since February 7th, 1959. Got a little house in Sand Lake. Now I have a duplex in Sand Lake. That's kind of another story, but I got here in and I did the usual thing. I went to Mountain View Elementary School, and then and it was here for the '64 quake, and I still remember it well. And so I've seen a lot of stuff, a lot of different kinds of weather patterns come through. I graduated high school '73 from service, first class, and I saw weather in Anchorage in the 70s where it was 55 below on Muldoon Road, and people don't remember that kind of stuff that weren't around, but if you lived here, you know, there's a lot of stuff happened. So anyway, after high school, I went to UAA welding program, then I worked on the pipeline, and so then after that I got married, had a couple kids, I bought the little house in Sand Lake in '82, and so I've lived in that area ever since. And over the years, when the work dried up in the 80s, I strapped a snowplow on the front of a '76 GMC Jimmy and made money plowing church parking lots and neighbors' driveways and my own street. You know, so I played with snow all my life. My parents had a duplex or a triplex, and me and my dad used to shovel snow. And my wife told me the other day that somebody said, "Oh, you live in the house with a heated driveway on the corner." She said, no, my husband's just a fanatic about clearing snow. So anyway, that's kind of the way that goes. I've got 2 daughters, and both of them worked for their stepfather plowing snow, had plows on their truck. So it kind of runs in the family that and we like to ski and snowboard and all that activity stuff. But about 20 years ago, I went to work on building drilling rigs around here. I worked for the Anchorage Natural Gas Company before it became Instar. So digging in the ground around here, I've seen a lot of water stuff, a lot of problems with water, snow melt running into where you're trying to work and dripping down your welding hood. Worked up on the slope for about 20 years. Then I had a change of occupations, kind of hit me suddenly. Come down with a little case of brain cancer that wouldn't go away, and a couple of years, 3 years of rehabilitation, learning how to walk and talk again. I went to work for a nonprofit as a head injury support specialist because I had some of the experience. Anyway, and they hired me out of that support group. I worked there for I'm running over. I worked there for a while, but anyway, when I was working there, I saw this proposal about getting snow out of Fairview, and I think Alan was in on putting it together, and it was a great proposal. So I'm just going to go to the next slide, and so I got a clicker. Next slide.
Depending on the snow, it'll melt between 10 and 15 truckloads of snow an hour.
And with the winter we've had so far, who wouldn't like to melt away some of those large piles of snow, even the small ones? It's possible with a machine called the Snow Dragon.
The Snow Dragon. The Central Iowa Landscape Company demonstrated how the Dragon works today. And News Channel 8's Angie Hunt was there. Angie, this thing sounds really cool or hot. Maybe it's hot.
Either way, I guess you could say, but it was pretty cool to watch some of that snow disappear just about as fast as they could dump it into the trailer. Push around a record amount of snow this winter, and you begin to run out of places to put it all.
We haven't had our January thaw, and we're in February already, and it's not going to happen, so this stuff stays around, and it just gets deeper and deeper.
With no help from Mother Nature, Landscapes by Design decided this would be the winter to put the Snow Dragon to the test. The Slater-based company handles snow removal for large commercial areas and believes this could be a cost-effective way to move it out.
Still trying to figure out if it can really save money. And that's why we wanted to demo it to show how fast it could actually melt the snow.
Wonder says the Snow Dragon is like a large hot tub. A diesel-powered generator heats water to spray over the snow as it's added to the trailer. In a matter of minutes, it can melt a bucket load and handle around 30 tons of snow in an hour. Of course, this is not a cheap investment. One of these machines averages around $250,000, but it could be a worthwhile investment for cities when compared to the cost of hauling away snow.
Even though it uses, 40 to 50 gallons of diesel an hour, I'll guarantee you we're using a lot more than that when we're hauling it away.
Instead of using multiple dump trucks to haul snow, Wonder says this is a two-man operation that's green.
It actually reduces emissions since you're only firing one motor and can save around 50% versus trucking. It actually discharges cleaner water than snow melt. It actually filters the sediment out. It sits in the bottom of the machine.
And because of the cost, this is not something that you can exactly pull in and have clear your driveway. But there is a lot of interest, Wonder says, from some cities like Ames, Des Moines. Also, DOT and DMAC have expressed an interest in today's demonstration. Again, this is a large investment, but with the winter we've had, it'd likely pay off.
Yeah, it might pay for itself pretty quickly. Thank you, Angie.
Okay, so this is kind of my takeaways here. The that Fairview Rec Center study provides a good place to start. Multiple sites around the community could be serviced by one machine, and the old system of dump trucks could still be used, and private companies could also embrace this technology as well. Appropriate drains for parking lots to accommodate this new technology could be added to the MOA design specifications going forward. So with that in mind, here is some links, and I will be happy to take your questions later.
Frank, what a cool idea. Thank you. Beautiful. And I can take that too. Very well done, Frank. And Frank had some links on his slides. So this is a great time for me to plug that the slides for today's nerd presentations are going to be available online. They'll be linked in the YouTube recording of this event, and they'll also be available on the Anchorage Assembly website. So you can take a look. That UAA report is meaty, it's thick, and you can dive right in. Whew, that's a lot of pages. All right, okay, so we only have one more nerd presentation left. Please welcome Chennery. Here you go, my dear. You got this.
Thank you. All right, my name is Chennery Fife. I work for Trout Unlimited. Trout Unlimited is an organization here in Alaska that works to conserve, protect, and restore freshwater salmon and trout habitat. And we have been on the technical working group for the Eklutna Fish and Wildlife Program since 2019. We have currently a plan, or not we, but there is a plan currently on the governor's desk that would determine the future of the Eklutna hydroelectric power plant. But it also will dictate the future of the Eklutna River and the entire watershed for the next 35 years. And that impacts the salmon, the wildlife, and the people who are all connected to that water. So this is a conversation about power. There's a lot of pieces at play. But along with tonight's topic, I wanted us to consider the water. So let's start 100 years ago when the water ran free in Eklutna River. So the Dena'ina people settled at Eklutna because the salmon that ran up Eklutna River could support their entire village. The Eklutna River used to be the size of Eagle River and supported all 5 species of salmon. Sockeye salmon would swim the 12 miles up the Eklutna River and spawn in Eklutna Lake. Chinook and coho salmon would go even further through the lake and into the upstream tributaries of the east and west fork of the Eklutna to spawn and rear. So it's a very important river for many species of fish and for the people as well. So the traditional ecological knowledge from Eklutna elders talks about how much salmon were in the river and the lake before the dams were built. So one elder talks about how just above Thunderbird Creek confluence, they used to use pews to pitch as many fish of all species to land as they could. Another elder talks about how there were so many fish swimming upstream you could see them with your naked eye. Another elder talked about her family's cabin on Eklutna Lake where they would fish for salmon and then smoke that and bring it down to the village. There was consensus among several elders that yes, there was definitely fishing and cabins set up at Eklutna Lake. Then in 1929, this dam was built by a private landowner that blocked fish passage. You don't see any fish ladder there or anywhere. There's no way for fish to migrate up and downstream. So that was built in 1929 and with no consultation of the native village downstream, a few miles. Eventually, this dam was decommissioned and actually abandoned in the early 1950s. Then in 1955, this dam was completed. This is the upper Eklutna Dam at Eklutna Lake. It also blocks fish migration in and out of the lake. And more than that, it blocks all water from going downstream, except during flood events. So 100% of that water is diverted. 90% of that water goes to the Eklutna power plant to provide about 3 to 6% of Anchorage's electricity. And 10% goes down through AWU infrastructure for 90% of our drinking water. So we are all connected to this water. So in 1991, Chugach Electric Association, Matanuska Electric Association, and the municipality of Anchorage purchased the power plant and accompanying dam for a screaming deal of only $6 million. They were not required to meet FERC licensing requirements. That's the organization, the federal agency that dictates how dams are built in modern age that often provide things like fish passage. This agreement did not include that, but it did include a promise to develop and implement measures to protect, mitigate damages to, and enhance fish and wildlife, and related spawning grounds and habitat. The environmental assessment of that purchase agreement said the intent of this promise was to bring back the sockeye salmon run that spawn in Eklutna Lake. As we know, the Cook Inlet salmon stock is not doing very well. King salmon fishing is closed all over the Cook Inlet, including the Sioux, the Little Sioux, Kasilof, West Cook Inlet, and Kenai rivers, as we all know. And just 2 weeks ago, on August 12th, coho fishing was closed for the entire Susitna River drainage. And here we have a valley ripe with just the right habitat, very little development, that's ready for salmon to return if only we can get water down the river. Dr. Peter Wesley from the University of Alaska Fairbanks has seen in many areas around the state that salmon actually can recover if given a chance. So river restoration has been underway in recent history. This first dam was actually demolished in 2018 in one of the most ambitious river restoration projects in Alaska by the Conservation Fund, the Native Village of Eklutna, and Eklutna Inc. And now that promise to mitigate damages is due. So the plan that's on the governor's desk right now was put forth by the power companies. What they're proposing is to take water from the lake, pipe it a mile downstream, and release it through an AWU portal valve. This plan leaves a mile of the river dry, so no fish passage. Fish cannot walk on dry land and up over a dam. So they're still blocked from their traditional spawning and rearing grounds. And it releases only a trickle of water down the remaining river. And they go, so the federal agencies and Native Village of Eklutna and stakeholders like Trout Unlimited have asked for things over and over. We want water the entire length of the river following a natural hydrograph. And we want fish to be able to migrate in and out of the lake. And this plan put forth by the power companies accomplishes neither goal. The power companies go as far to say that they can restore 99% of fish habitat with only 3% of the historic flows of the Eklutna River. The math, it just doesn't add up. So let's zoom out. Let's think more broadly. We have an opportunity here to restore a river and its once thriving salmon runs right here in Anchorage. We have an opportunity to right a historic injustice against the Eklutna people who were never consulted when these dams were built. We have a chance to think really creatively, to find a solution that's good for everyone and everything that utilizes this water, whether it's the salmon, the bears and belugas that eat the salmon, the rest of the watershed ecosystem, or each and every one of us that are connected to that water. We're not like the lower 48. Our salmon runs are not gone forever. So we have the chance to show the world what it means to have sustainable energy, clean, reliable drinking water, and a salmon river restoration all together, side by side. We just have to remember who we are as Alaskans and remember the very important resource, not forget about the water. Thank you.
Chennery, well done. Beautiful. That was an incredible run of presentations. Give it up for all of our nerds. We're going to take 5 minutes, grab a beer, use the restroom. I'm going to grab some chairs, and we'll be right back for Q&A. All right, folks, we're going to transition to Q&A. I'm looking for the nerds of the night. Nerds, please rise and join me at the front. All right, Brian, you get first dibs on your seat. We have 8. Beautiful. Meg's here. Charla's here. Tim's here. Alan's coming. Nice, great. It's a free-for-all. Pick a seat, any seat. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Welcome, Frank. All right, and Jacques joining us too. Okay. All right. Well, thank you all so much for the excellent questions. I just did a quick review, tried to gather them in ways that made sense, and I noticed a theme among many of them. So I want to know, how many housing nerds are here tonight? Yeah, housing. All right. The Anchorage Assembly has identified housing action as one of the top priorities of this year. So it makes sense that over program to program, no matter the topic, housing is the foundation of where we live. It's the foundation of our community. And so it absolutely finds a place in each and every one of these conversations. And so I thank you all for bringing that up. So our first couple of questions have to do with housing, water infrastructure. So I'm just going to give this to you, Jacques, for the time being, and you'll be able to answer. And the Q&As are available, or the questions are available for any of our nerds to answer. So nerds, if you have a response that you want to go ahead and chime in with, go ahead and raise your hand. We'll make sure that the mic circles around to you. All right. This feels like a foundational question. You gave us a diagram of the utilities that are under the earth, right? So why are the water pipes 10 feet down? Why aren't they 6 feet down?
It's generally because at 10 feet is when our pipes are protected from freezing, right? So if you actually look around Anchorage, that's generally where the groundwater table sits. So if you guys know anything about water, it's a huge, it can suck up a lot of heat, right? It takes a lot of energy to boil it and freeze it. And so it acts as a natural insulator. So 10 feet is where we keep our pipes unfrozen.
I'm so glad to hear that there are engineers that are like thinking about these things and building our city in a way that makes some good sense. That's really great. So could you explain why, like, it kind of grosses me out to think that the sewer is above the water line? Right? Like, can you explain that?
There are a lot of regulations to make sure they don't mix. No. So sewer is a little bit higher because obviously it's got latent heat in it, so it freezes at a lower depth. And then there are also horizontal and vertical separation limits. And if we don't meet that, we put a lot of stuff in between them. We also seal all our pipes and pressure test them to make sure they're not leaking. So the short answer is that's a depth that it freezes, doesn't freeze, but we also make sure we have a bunch of other controls. The other part about that, too, is that the water system is a pressurized system. So any leaks mean the water goes out. So it's very hard for stuff to get in because we're pushing everything out. So
I love to hear that. That will help me sleep at night. That's great. Okay, so you also shared, we started off with a quiz about the percentage of homes serviced by, or in the service area serviced by AWU. And that percentage was 80%. Why aren't we at 100%?
Well, it goes back to our historical expansion programs, which are improvement districts and developers. So the utility doesn't expand as like a program. We don't just say, oh, we're going to build out pipe to this neighborhood. We have to have, for an improvement districts, the community will propose and then vote on whether or not they want to be part of our utility. And a developer will acquire a piece of land, and then as a private development, they will build it and then donate that asset to us. And so that's typically how we expand. So that's why we're not at 100%.
And you can't just like mandate that, oh, we're digging up your property.
Yeah, the RCA, so the Regulatory Commission of Alaska, is our economic regulator. And so they basically tell us how and what we can incorporate in rates. And there's a couple different ways, there's your monthly utility bill, and there's a thing also called assessments. So the short of it is that we can't force anybody to be on our system that doesn't want to be on our system. I mean, it's a very nuanced, and there's all these different components of it, but generally that's, and if somebody does want to join, we want them to pay for the portion that they're joining for. So cost payer is a short little, not motto, but that's a term we talk about a lot.
Seems short and sweet. I don't know if I totally understand it, but I trust you. So then thinking about the expense of digging 10 feet into the earth, making these connections, right? You said out of all of the utilities, like this one's probably the most expensive, if not definitely the most expensive. So would it behoove Anchorage to allow more housing on the existing infrastructure? Why or why not? And then if so, what areas, like are there geographic conditions that are particularly helpful if you're thinking that it is better to develop housing on the existing infrastructure?
I think I missed part of that, but the short of it is if you look at, and we've got this actually, this is a public map that you can see which parcels are served by just sewer, because we have some of those, which parcels are just served by water, and then which are served by both utilities. And I call it the checkerboard because there's not necessarily a total geographic pattern to it, but you can see that there are definitely areas that have less connections than some others. And I think there was another part to that, and then I see a hand behind me. I think it was Meg.
Excellent. I will read it again. It's asking, are there geographic areas that have infrastructure, right, that would be ripe for new housing? I don't know, something like that.
So we explored this pretty deeply when we were eliminating single-family zoning recently, and what we know is that the typical family size is smaller. So, excuse me. So while we may be adding new housing, we may not be adding new people. And so if you kind of extrapolate that, even when you're not on AWU's system, most systems are rated to number of bedrooms, so really it extrapolates into the number of people. And so as long as we're not dropping tens of thousands of more people, wouldn't that be a great problem to have, into the system, our current system can generally encourage additional housing density within its current built environment, with a few exceptions.
That's great. Thank you, Meg. Anything else to add? All right. So now we're going to shift and be thinking about how climate shapes the place. And Brian, you shared, Brian's down here down the line. Perfect. Thanks for handing the mic down. Our first question is, it feels humid this summer. I feel a little sticky here today. Is that climate change?
Yeah, yes and no. I'll cover the climate part. So as air warms, it can hold more moisture. And there's an unlimited reservoir of moisture, the ocean. And so the air acts like a sponge. So you warm it up, the sponge just gets a little bigger, and it can just hold more moisture. So we're seeing that locally. We're seeing it globally, lower 48, doesn't matter where you look. Washington Post had a story today that included some of the charts and analysis that I did showing our record humid summer globally this year.
That's fascinating, because I was also wondering where humidity factored into the equation that you had up on the screen.
Well, humidity doesn't really factor into that, but the warmer air holding more moisture means that that's why we're expecting more precipitation to fall.
So this person clearly understands some climate stuff. They say, so given that we've had 150% plus of mean annual precipitation in the last few years, what is the evaporative demand ratio look like for Anchorage?
Well, what we call the potential evapotranspiration is about 17 inches a year. So the last 5 years, we've averaged about 23 inches of precipitation, so about an extra 60% more water than evaporation. So we're on a short term, we're getting wetter, but we need to be careful extrapolating. Fairbanks had like 8 years in a row of much above normal precipitation, and then like the last 3 years are much drier. So what kind of looks like a trend for a few years, we've had a couple of good snow years. Now, I like snow, so a lot of snow is a good snow year. But in the last decade, we've had 2 of our worst snow years on record, or 3 of our worst snow years. So it could be tempting to do some short-term extrapolations, but we got to be really careful about that.
Yeah, so as we as city nerds, right? We live in a city and we are thinking about city stuff, but we also know that our built environment will last long after this moment here today, right? So thinking decades down the line, is it time to build resiliency into our city for the drier/hotter climate? And what would that entail? They offer removing dead trees, using metal roofs, rainwater capture, question mark, question mark, question mark.
Well, we should always build resiliency into our cities, into the built environment. But as far as adapting for the climate, I mean, every city is built for the climate. You know, you can take someone in Dallas and bring them to Fairbanks in January, and they'll be cold, but they won't die. But you take someone from Fairbanks to Dallas in February 2021, where they had a cold air outbreak, and they might have died because the infrastructure isn't built for it. They lost power for a week, and many people died from cold exposure. So cities, again, are built for their climate. And so the housing stock we have now is built for the climate that we've had for the last 50 years, and it may not be the climate that we're going to have in the next 50 years.
Are you saying that now's a good time to get into the air conditioning business?
I always worry when I go into Fred Meyer in the summer and they have all the box fans, you know, on sale. Like, oh, go, they must know something. Yeah.
Yes, Freddy's knows. Okay, so thinking about city planning, resiliency, operations, this question is for Frank, talking about snow removal. You mentioned the 2014 Fairview study, and so Alan, I think you also will be able to speak to this. Could you explain what that study was and maybe what are some of the takeaways?
Well, it was done really well, and Alan, I guess they got a grant, and the senior engineering class at UAA that year, I don't have their names right in front of me, but they did a really good job. I mean, they went around and did all the perk tests on the parking lots, and they came up with alternative sites through the Fairview area where different churches or organizations where the snow dump could be located. They did a lot of thinking about it, and but they were designing it with steam coils and stuff in the ground. So you would have to, it would be a pretty big brick and mortar. I guess that would be kind of, something that wouldn't be mobile. And the Snow Dragon would be mobile. So but what's in that study is it's got the trucking studies versus melting. It's 122 pages of really well thought out stuff. So do you have anything to add to that, Alan?
Yeah.
Okay.
So the snow melt cistern, concept is what was examined by the UAA engineer as a capstone class, and it emerged from. I've been a long time proponent of Anchorage as a livable winter city. That go back decades. So one of those efforts was. I became aware during all the research. I looked at northern communities or winter cities across the northern latitudes and said, okay, how have they approached our challenges? Well, in the island of Hokkaido in northern Japan, they get huge dumps of snow, right? And so. What they do, they've actually developed these snow melt cisterns, and they have them both for commons area, for common space, but they also make them available for private homeowners, and so they have the ability to and their electric utility, it actually markets the use of these snow melt cisterns. Of course, they're the ones who provide the power. They're the ones that make a lot of money, off of it. But still, yet, they are they engage in creative and innovative, ways of dealing with snow, and it's neighborhood-based snow removal, rather than put it in a big truck and haul it away to the snow dump that gets taller and taller and taller and taller and taller. What they decided, well, how about if we just do things a little bit differently, and let's have a cistern where it works. They got design, specs and and everything for their system. But basically, it's, you dig a big deep hole, you put, melting elements down at the base, and it's got sensors, and it's when the temperature reaches a certain thing, that kicks on the sensors. When the snow falls, the homeowner or a neighborhood association, they'll open up the lid, they'll push all the snow, into it, and it melts away and into the drainage system, that they have there. And so, I said, oh, that's a great idea. Why don't we look at that, right? And so I was able to convince at the time, Assemblyman, Patrick Flynn, I can't believe he keeps bugging me. I said, okay, I'm going to put in. So we included as part of our CIP, our Fairview Community Council, CIP list, this notion of a snowmelt cistern, and put in money. As part of the legislative request package, it went to the legislature. Legislature, gave the municipality $50,000, to do a sort of a design, study. $50,000 at that time was pretty good. And it came to the municipality, and Public Works got the money, and they go, what? So they didn't know what to do with it. It was just too different. And for folks there at the time, and eventually it sat there, and then until finally they said, well, let's get UAA to do it, and that's what happened. And then that resulted in the study that Frank was talking about. A little bit of history, probably too much.
Thank you so much for that background, and I love hearing that because I'm honing in on a couple of, I think, really important themes there in that story. And the first is that I want to call out, I love that UAA was tagged as a partner in innovation, right? And that's really the purpose of an anchor institution like a university, is to supply information, to research interesting questions, and to help policymakers shape the future of our lives, our community. So first of all, that's super cool. Second thing that's super cool about that, and maybe a theme, and brings us to one of our next questions, is this idea of government being creative, right? Shocking. But government is made up of people. And speaking for myself, working in government, I'm a nerd for cities, right? And I'm a creative person. And if we think of government as a system of people, and people are creative, I think it's really compelling to be thinking about government having some creativity in their approach. And so even partnering with an anchor institution in and of itself was a creative approach, right? And so I want to applaud the folks then, even if they didn't have the capacity to take on that research question, to partner with an institution and actually get that work done, I think is a great story. So thank you for sharing that context, and thank you for sharing the report and a great idea.
Okay,
I think it's really compelling.
Quick follow-up on your comments, and that is, this is important because you talk about being creative. It's a key thing about it's how we visualize what's around us, right? And right now, not enough of us are able to visualize a livable winter city. The fact is, if you look at our code, if you look at examples, in municipality, look at, for example, municipal code talks about the landscape ordinance. Well, all you're required to do is provide landscaping, for the summertime. Nothing. I said, okay, why don't we talk about landscaping for the winter, the 6 months of darkness, right? When we desperately need something that's kind of more vibrant, right? And where we're celebrating, our streetscapes and making the streetscapes more enticing for us to get out and walk.
Alan, I hear you. That's great.
Yeah. I'm just saying, it's about the way we think, and we've got to think differently.
Alan, we have 2 more questions and only like 6 minutes. So we're going to dive back into the next one. And so put a pin in creative government. We'll come back around to that because I felt like, Frank, that question was kind of like a pop quiz question, asking you to relay this big study. So I appreciate your answer to it because that was really great. And so this is another pop quiz question, and that is for our stewards of the Prince William Sound. Can you if you're familiar with the Save Our Seas Act, explain what that is and if it's having an impact in your work.
Tim, would you like to take that one?
Sure. So no, the short of it is that I'm not as familiar with SOS Seas 2.0 as I should be, but is it impacting our work? So that's one part. I mentioned the challenge that communities have, whether it be here in Alaska and across the globe, and there's a lot of recognition of that. And there's a few pieces of legislation and some sources that have become available. And it is, Dan Sullivan's been a champion of Save Our Seas 1 and 2. And then some really enormous amounts from the federal government from the bipartisan infrastructure law and the Inflation Reduction Act. So those together have empowered NOAA and Sea Grant and others to administer hundreds of millions of dollars. And you're asking if it impacts our work. Save Our Seas is in there, and I just don't know the exact mechanism to talk about that bill enough. And one of the reasons is because, so here's an example. The folks, what's his name? Andy Schroeder out of Cordova, and I forget the name of his organization. Anyhow, I won't remember it right now, but they just removed 127,000 pounds of garbage from Kayak Island. This just happened. It's not really reported on quite yet, but that just happened. And we're removing 2,000 to 4,000 pounds a year. And Chris Pallister on the south side of Montague, I don't have numbers for him, but these areas on the outer coast are removing, many, many, many times what we're doing. And they're also dealing with, whether it be those organizations or others, like you think about the village of Chenega Bay or other small villages, anywhere on coastal Alaska, there's really big problems like derelict vessels. And like I just touched upon, the ability of small communities to even have the workforce to gather garbage, and it's a really big deal, like how you backhaul that or ship it away. The costs are impossible for organizations. So like I said about Prince William Sound, we're pretty well set because of what we have, this agency support, the nonprofit, the access to the road system, and because we're an inland sea. I don't want to minimize our work at all, because 2,000 to 4,000 pounds of garbage, that is a tremendous amount of difference that we're making in Prince William Sound. But we live in pretty weird times when that's a small amount of garbage. And these laws, whether it be SOS, Save Our Seas 2.0, or the two others that I mentioned, and all these instruments, we look at them, Charla and I and the board, several members of the board are in this room, and we look at all of these, and in many cases, these are tackling bigger problems for outer coast areas than we have. And I want every bit of that money that we can get, and we are getting. We're funded by Exxon Valdez Oil Spill Trustee Council, Resource Advisory Council, and others. But there's just a lot because of the size of our operation that we don't qualify for. And all three of those are some of those examples, which is why I can't speak about the details. But it's really good what's happening, and it represents a change. But there's so much. The amount of plastic in the oceans is only set to increase. And things we should know about, like the government is responding to this in many ways on the state level and federally and whatnot. But is everybody familiar with the UN Plastics Treaty? Like, do folks know about this? Okay, learn about it, because it matters. And it really does, because the entire world, through the United Nations, is aware. I mean, you got people in Indonesia and all kind of places across the planet that are totally unequipped to deal with the problem. Microplastics are all the way inside our brain tissue. They're in everything we eat. They're everywhere, and we don't even barely understand the... What's that? In breast milk, of course they are. Yes, right. And they're everywhere. And in plastics, there's thousands and thousands of chemicals that by proprietorship are not identified or understood. It's an enormous thing. The United Nations has taken this on, and the negotiations have been going on for about 2 years now, and they're reaching a conclusion this winter here, and I forget where the next meeting is. They're happening around different locations in the world. But tune into this if you're curious about Save Our Seas or any of the mechanisms in place and what the issue is. And the other people that are tuning into it before you from the very beginning is the oil and gas industry and the plastics industry, because as the world transitions away into new renewable energy, we have a lot of oil, gas, a lot of access to it, and plastics is a real security for these industries. And I know that this is very controversial to bring up in Alaska, where we are so dependent on that, but we're also dependent on our oceans. And there's a very direct investment going on in the continued plastics creation, okay? Because one of the things that UN Plastics Treaty is debating is about whether to cap production or not. Well, production is skyrocketing, and the numbers that you look at for the amount of plastic that's still heading into the world, it's amazing. And we only recycle about 9% of plastics right now, not because we're not trying. People like Pat Simpson with his grizzly wood, it's an innovative idea. But anytime you recycle plastic, you're also, there's things going on. We won't get into that, but we only recycle 9% because that's only about how much we know how to recycle. So it's an enormous thing. We're still putting plastics in the ocean. Tune into the Plastics Treaty and these other laws and measures that I've talked about, because it's a lot of excitement, but it's also a lot to be disheartened about.
Thank you for that. And thank you for sharing this with us. It was interesting when you asked if anybody was aware, and we all said no, and now we are aware, right? Like, and this is how those conversations, this is how that knowledge is passed on. It's through conversations like these. So thank you. Moving to our last presentation, I want to talk about the Eklutna River. I think we just heard about things that are happening on the federal level that we don't know about. This is something that a lot of people don't know about on the local level, right? And so we're hoping for an update, or at least like a snapshot of where the process is at, and what can people do about it?
Good question. So right now, the plan is on the governor's desk, so it's really up to the governor at this point. He has until October 2nd to make a final decision on what the plan should be, or at least outlining parameters of what that mitigation plan could look like.
There we go. The governor did something unusual. While the plan is on his desk and it is up to him, he just reached out to the interested parties, Matanuska Electric, Chugach Electric, the municipality of Anchorage, Native Village of Eklutna, and said, I want you all to answer some questions for me, which is great, because he could have just signed a plan, and said, I want you to address these questions kind of about the intersection between the parties, so the municipality is not in alignment with the other two power owners, so it's a 3-owner situation. The municipality says 12 miles of water, restore the fish. The power owners have suggested the portal valve, which leaves the mile dry. So he wants to know the intersection between those things. He wants to know what the parameters of the 91 agreement let him do, because he doesn't have to accept any one alternative. He could come up with something else. So that briefing is due on the 4th of September to the governor. So the assembly will be having a special meeting, hopefully to sign on to the municipality's brief so that we have a united front there. And then on September 9th, there will be oral arguments by the parties to the governor answering questions. And then the assembly has the opportunity on the 5th of September, in this in-between time, we have a joint meeting with the Native Village of Eklutna. And we will be taking up a resolution to really affirm our mutual position, which is water in all 12 miles. We've identified some alternatives that could do that, and really making sure that that public action is taken so it is a part of the conversation. After that September 9th date, I think that will likely be the end of the submission of materials and the conversation with the governor's office, and I expect him to take that back. And then we're working towards that October 2nd deadline. So it's what you can do. You can always reach out to a public official. And I will tell you, the public so far has weighed in. 4 out of 5 comments support river restoration. And so you can always make your voice known. You don't need a special comment period. All those emails are available. And I really recommend that you do so if you feel strongly about this. This is a once-in-a-generation opportunity. This will shape our community for years to come. So I can't underscore how important I think this issue is. It rates right up there with, I don't know, the restoration of the port, that your roads work, that clean water comes out of your tap. It's all interrelated. Thanks.
Yeah, we appreciate the work that you're doing in the assembly for sure. And a quick plug, I've got sign-up sheet in the back. So if you want to hear updates from Trout Unlimited, you can write in what issues you really care about, or you can also follow us on Instagram to hear updates on Aklutna and all the other issues that we're working on in the state. So thank you.
Folks, round of applause for the nerds. Yay! Give it up for... Okay, just want to make sure. Eli! Thank you, Casey. Thank you, Trent. And thank you all for joining us tonight for City Nerd Night. Have a great evening. Talk to you later.